You almost died.
Yep. Every hour, it was just blood coming out of me. Within 3 weeks, I went from 170 pounds to 120 pounds. I said, if I don't get medical intervention in the next couple hours, I'm not making it. They had to go in emergency surgery, remove my entire large intestine, fell apart in the doc's hands as he was taking it out. They're all telling me all this stuff I couldn't do. And I said, we'll just see about that. Bulked from like 170 up to 180, 182, cut down to about 165. There's the Bimini to Florida crossing.
How far is that?
82 miles. I want to do it on surf ski solo.
How long is that going to take you?
14 hours. My big goal, and I'm probably a couple years away from it, the ultimate crossing is the Molokai crossing. I would probably use my prone paddleboard, which is a 14-foot board. Those conditions, you can be in 6 to 10-foot seas, 28 miles.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today I am talking with a dude who's a strategist, a facilitator, a deal maker, but more recently, a brother in the Agoge for how long now?
Be 3 years next month.
3 years. His story hits hard, man, and his before and afters is just legendary. So if you're looking for proof that your rock bottom can become your launch pod, stay locked into this, man. Berrick Abramson, dude, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Welcome to the thing, man. Josh was like, you guys should have Berrick on. I'm like, yes, I should have Berrick on. But right into the gate, before we go into, well, I guess we can kind of go. We'll go back to like younger years here soon. But you almost died.
Yep.
And this happened, what, 5 years ago?
Yep, about 5 years ago.
What happened?
I had sudden onset of what I would find out was an autoimmune disease called Crohn's disease.
What is that for people that don't?
So it is a disease where your body is attacking itself on the inside. And in my case, it's attacking the entire intestinal system. It started off, I thought I had a stomach bug. Mm-hmm. It was just run into the bathroom every couple hours. Then there started to be blood in that. Then it was every hour. It was just blood coming out of me.
The onset was that fast?
It was over a couple of days. Within 3 weeks, I went from 170 pounds to 120 pounds. Couldn't get out of a recliner. I was just in a recliner, couldn't move.
Were you alone at the time? No, you were.
My then girlfriend, now my wife, had been out of town on a work trip.
Of course.
And of course, like a guy, I'm Googling it, and then I'm like, oh, well, I might have this infection. I might have this. She gets back, and I'm in pretty rough shape. So we start calling doctors, and
this is before Dr. Chat GPT, right? So you actually had to use Google.
WebMD and Google, and
which is always horrible, by the way.
Oh God, yeah. And doctors were telling me the first time they'd be able to see me was in May, and they're like, well, we can get you in August or September. And my girlfriend Carrie just wasn't having that, so she tracked down.
I'll be dead by then.
Yeah.
So you said you lost that much weight? How fast?
I lost a little over 50 pounds in 3 weeks.
And the whole time you're just
I couldn't eat. I couldn't keep anything in, and it is just blood coming out of me.
Oh my God, man. And what do you think brought this on? So
the disease has no known cause. It's a genetic condition
that
usually presents when you're young. There are some things that can keep it in remission. It usually comes on in your teen years, but no cause and nothing.
How were you when this happened?
So I was 48 when this hit me.
Young, man.
Yeah. And I will never forget after we were fighting with the doctors to even get me seen, fighting with the insurance. And there was one night I hadn't slept in 3 days. And, I tell people I was sitting there talking to death. And it wasn't like I was having
No, 3 days you're having hallucinations.
Yeah.
100%.
It wasn't like I'm negotiating. It was just there. And I remember Carrie had moved herself. She was sleeping on a mattress in the living room. And I looked over her and I said, if I don't get medical intervention in the next couple hours, I'm not making it. And she took me to the ER.
What did you feel that made you think that?
I just felt myself slipping away. I had no nourishment. Days without sleep. I didn't see how it was going to turn around.
Yeah.
And
you just felt like
at that point,
this is I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just wild, man. So how were you physically before this thing hit?
I had decided, that's the irony, I had decided to get back in shape.
So you weren't in shape when this happened?
I had started, nothing like what I've done the last 3 years,
Yeah, right.
but I had started eating healthy. I had started doing some light workouts back in February of that year. I had an incident where I had these pains in my calf. And the doctor said, well, this is kind of the irony of all of this. Doctor said, you've got a partially blocked artery. We've got to go in and put a stent in. And to do that, you've got to get healthy. So they did that in February. I was getting all healthy. That turned out to be a couple surgeries because it turned out I didn't need that stent, and it almost cost me my leg 2 years later. But I was in decent shape, not great shape by any means, but I think being in okay shape helped me survive it a little bit.
So what's the situation with the heart now?
So I ended up, the Crohn's disease, they had to go in emergency surgery, remove my entire large intestine, fell apart in the doc's hands as he was taking it out.
Like just disintegrated?
Disintegrated in his hands. They ended up pulling the small intestine out through the stomach of my, the wall of my stomach. And I lived with that in a bag for a few months while stuff healed. Put me on different medications.
Hold on. You lived with what in the bag?
So my large intestine was gone. The end of my small intestine poked out the side of my stomach.
So that picture of you real skinny in the thing with the bag on your side,
Yeah.
that was your small intestine hanging out?
That's where crap went. It was
Okay.
into a bag out there.
Nice.
They gave me a couple medications that they were trying to get the disease to go into remission. One of them, I had such an allergic reaction that my BP spiked to over 200. Then I went frigid. They thought they had given me what's called drug-induced MS. So they pulled me off all these medications. In the middle of all of that, I start losing feeling in my leg again. We go back and get that imaged, and they said, you never needed a stent. That wasn't the problem.
God, dude.
When you used to run fast boats 30 years ago, you put a bunch of bone spurs in your lower spine. That was the only problem you ever had. So I'm getting surgery.
Did you ever get an MRI?
So they had done imaging, and it turns out some surgeon just decided to be a little overambitious and do that surgery. So
Fucking heart surgery?
Heart surgery. We go back in. I find a new cardiac surgeon.
What?
He looks at it and he says, the good news is you never needed the stent.
Yeah.
The bad news is the stent has now caused a blockage that we've got to go in and take out. So
What was your mindset when you're hearing all this for the first time? Plus, you're in the middle of dealing with this.
I'm trying to deal with the
intestine
Crohn's disease. It really was just, are you shitting me? Like, how much more are you going to throw at me? Was where my head was.
Damn.
So we go in for that surgery to get the blockage out. This is during COVID, so they won't let...
So super fun times in the hospital.
Good times at the hospital.
Yeah.
Carrie's in an RV out in the parking lot. I had been the first surgery in the morning. They tell her, okay, we got the blockage out. They send me home. We get home, and I said, my foot doesn't feel quite right. She calls the surgeon, and he says, get back to the hospital. So it's 10 o'clock at night. We're back in the hospital, and they said, you have a new blockage. It turned out when they tried to remove the blockage from the stent I didn't need, it threw a clot down my leg.
Okay.
I'm midnight. I'm the last surgery of the day now. They call Carrie at one point.
This is 2 surgeries in a day, in one day.
2 in one day. They call her at one point, about 1 o'clock in the morning. They said, we're still working on him, but if we don't get it resolved in the next 15 minutes, we're going to have to take his leg off. And so that's what kind of started, this was what the journey was like for 2 years of just fighting like hell. And it was one of those things.
So you would have just woken up without a leg and not really realizing.
Yeah, I had no idea. She was the one hearing it and getting stressed about it. I had no idea what was going on.
That's freaking scary, dude. You could have woken up with no leg.
Yeah.
Oops, we had to take
all
it
because of a misdiagnosis
years
that
ago.
started all of it. Because it was that misdiagnosis that led me to getting healthy, that led to the Crohn's presenting.
I wonder how much it was of this happens to where it does actually go all the way to like, yeah.
No, and look, I mean, my wife and I, we work from home. We have time. We're also relatively intelligent people who know how to navigate the system. We were spending 50 hours a week fighting with insurance, fighting with doctors, trying to find. I can't imagine what it's like for the average person that doesn't know how to navigate these systems.
I mean, I hate to use the word victims, but they're victims of the system. Yeah. Like their life just goes to shit. So at one point in this, you found the Agoge and like, how the hell? And I remember you coming on and it was like, dude, this guy's super jacked up. Like, what is going on here? So like, how did you find the Agoge?
It was, I think, about a year into kind of this odyssey of surgeries. Mm-hmm. And I was just hell-bent on I was coming back. You know, when they sent me home from all the surgeries with my intestinal system, they gave me a home care nurse.
Yeah.
And they were telling me all the things I wasn't going to do. And the nurse was like, you know, no more...
Always rubs a high performer the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's like, no lifting more than 2 pounds, no walking more than 3 steps. And she came over the second week and was like, you're fired. You're just not listening.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at this like I was alive. Mm-hmm. In June of that year, I didn't believe I was going to make it. And for the first time in my life, you and I have put ourselves in positions where we signed up to do something that could take us out. This was a place where I had finally found the woman I wanted to spend my life with.
Yeah.
I was just being healthy. I wasn't ready to die. So they were all telling me all this stuff I couldn't do. And I said, we'll just see about that. And just started poking around and stumbled on you. And I had some mutual friends on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And I remember reaching out and just saying, I need the accountability and I need a structure to take my entire life back.
Yeah. And so when you came on, where were you physically?
So I had come back from being skinny to, they were to keep me alive. They were putting me on 120 milligrams of prednisone a day.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I mean, it's evil. It's the weight gain. It's the insomnia. Mm-hmm. So I had gone from being a healthy-ish 170 to an almost dead 120.
Yep. To
being a nice round 175 and pretty busted up, you know, inside and needing to change everything.
Was everything reconnected?
Yeah, I mean, what remains is reconnected.
Remains is reconnected.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Before we get into the Agoge stuff, how do you deal with that now? Like, is there a different lifestyle for you, different food choices?
It's mostly food choices. So I don't have a large intestine.
Right.
And that's what, number one, where all the liquid gets absorbed. Mm-hmm. So I have the runs for most of my life now. Okay. But I'm also at constant risk of dehydration because I can't absorb the liquids.
Okay.
So I'm always drinking.
That's kind of wild too, because you being predisposed to dehydration, and then what you do physically in the races that you run, which we'll get into, is like there has to be some sort of management there.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. I'm learning what I can eat. I think the toughest thing for me, I can't eat raw fruits and vegetables because my body can't process them and break them down. And all that remains inside me is a small intestine. Mm-hmm. It's about, a quarter of an inch. So it would block me up and I'd be back in the hospital.
Okay.
So lots of reds and greens, lots of smoothies.
So you're on BP and red and
yep.
Does it help?
Absolutely.
You notice a difference?
Absolutely.
Was my next thing was like, what is the micronutrients that you're having to?
Yeah.
When did you start the BP and reds and greens?
Probably about 6 months into training with you guys and training with Josh. Yeah.
And you saw a big difference?
Huge difference.
What were you doing prior to that?
I would blend smooth. I mean, I was just trying to get by, honestly. Like I was recovering from everything.
So now you have a system of this is what I take.
100%.
Yeah. That's interesting. Absorption rate seems good?
Seems good. Yeah. I mean, I have to constantly add things to bulk up and to hold things in me a little longer.
Yeah.
Avocados, rice, potatoes type things.
Which is what you're doing right now, with Josh, right? You guys have been putting on weight. Yeah. This is what's for you is gotta be that's a fight into itself.
It is. Yeah.
So how many calories are you eating?
He's got me just over 2,800 now.
And that seems fine.
It's work.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's comfortable? Reducing. I guess when I'm saying comfortable in lifestyle, but also reducing side effects.
2,000 to 2,400.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the other thing. It's just because your large intestine is tens and tens of feet long. It's where everything gets
And that's
stored.
the bulk of the work, right?
Yeah, and that's what's not in me anymore. So food goes through me faster.
How much does that large intestine weigh? Did you ever ask that? You couldn't weigh it, but it disintegrated. But do you know what a large intestine weighs?
I don't know, but it holds so much crap, literally. It's got to be.
How much does a
10
large
plus
intestine
pounds.
weigh?
Trying to look it up right now.
I want to know about that. Like, you might be a whole different weight class just because you don't have a piece of gear.
Approximately 4 pounds.
4
Yeah.
pounds.
The average weight.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of work, man. So you joined the Agoge. You are a butterball of 170 something, right?
Yep.
How did that, like, dealing with everything you were dealing with, like, how did that journey, like, go?
It was the thing I needed to focus on something. I needed that mission, that goal, that objective that was going to consume me.
Did you start with Josh out the gate?
Yeah, I think I did the challenge in March.
That's right. Yes,
one of the last ones.
Yeah.
And then jumped in with Josh.
Right after that.
Yeah, a couple months later.
All right. How'd you do in the challenge?
I did good. I mean,
Yeah.
I got the results I wanted. Felt good. I don't remember. I think I dropped like 8 or 10 pounds and leaned down a bit. But for me, it was like the challenge was a jump start. It wasn't
Always
the
is.
end point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, always is. We talked about this a lot in the Agoge now. It's like, I hate 30-day challenges.
Yeah.
Because it's the mindset of people that constantly jump to, like, oh, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge, but then I'm just really going to go back to what I was doing. You're like, what are you actually improving in your life? You know, and there was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was, like, I would say close to 10% of people that would do a challenge and be like, okay, they would utilize it like you did. This was a reset button. It's a hard reset, but some people need that, like, slap in the face. Here's the hard reset. Now let's actually build a sustainable platform.
Yeah.
Let's just build a sustainable life and habits. So you jumped in, did the challenge, and then how did everything go from there?
Then it was about, okay, I'm alive. And I knew I still had more surgeries to go, but I literally felt like second chance at life. I'm going to maximize this.
How many surgeries had you had before you joined?
6 or 7 at that point.
Okay. And you ended up having how many total? 20 something?
I'm now at 26.
Are you still having surgeries?
I haven't in the last 12 months.
When?
Yeah.
Is there anything scheduled?
No.
Good. So what are all these surgeries, like, what is these constant surgeries?
So there was stuff to deal with the cardiac stuff that turned out I didn't need.
Yeah.
There was
That's resolved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of it was the intestinal stuff. But then a byproduct of some of the medications I was on, and some of the stuff that you and I have been exposed to in other places.
Yeah.
I had massive holes in my jaw. That the medicines they put me on made it worse. So as I'm going through the surgeries from the Crohn's, my teeth start falling out. So they ended up having to go in and completely rebuild my lower jaw, take out all of my teeth, rebuild my mouth.
What?
Yeah.
And this is while you were in the Agoge?
Yeah.
Dude, at some point, you have to have so much resilience, because at some point people are like, dude, this is too much, man. Like, fucking hell, man.
And that's where, I credit 3 things. I credit the woman I have standing next to me.
Yeah.
I credit you and Josh and the tribe, and my own somewhere between stupidity and stubbornness.
That's what Josh and I say. We're just too dumb to quit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I wish I could. There's some things that I probably should. We've had that conversation before. Like, there's some things I probably should quit, but something inside of me is like, no, I'm not quitting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, get fucked.
Yep.
If I'm going to do something, it's going to be on my own terms, not because of this perseverance or this, whatever.
Nothing outside is going to tell me.
Nothing outside is coming. I'll be the one that decides.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
So you're going through these surgeries. How are you guys and Josh, like, jumping back and forth? Like, how are you?
I mean, Josh, he was absolutely amazing.
Of course, yeah.
And he never took any bullshit, but I don't think I gave it to him. I was always very real about where I was, and what the limitations might be.
I'm guessing if to put it out there, this is just my guess, would be like focusing on the things that we can control.
Yeah.
And then that's usually his method. It's like, I'm not going to worry about all of this because it's fucked and we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But we can control these things.
Yep.
So we're going to nail the shit out of those things.
Yeah. And he would, you know how many surgeries he's gone through. So he's been down that path. So I'd go in for a surgery.
He told you about the whole thing, like with the girl, like he's like, oh, you're not going to walk. You're not going to run. Like you're going to be in a wheelchair. And he was like, get fucked, doc. Yeah, true.
So no, I mean, he was amazing because he could be like, look, I know you're going to be stubborn and you're going to want to get after it tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
You're going under general anesthetic. Maybe you shouldn't be an asshole and you should let that work out of your system for a day or two. So let's move to this, movement. Let's do this or that. But yeah, he's been right there with me every step.
And then you did a photo shoot. When was that? Last year?
It was last February. Yeah.
Last February.
Yep.
So over a year ago. Yep. So you're at that point, you were only 2 years in?
Yep. So
what made you decide, like, you have all this shit's going? When was your last surgery? About a year in? Or when did you have, or I guess, no. You had surgery
before and after that.
Before and after the photo shoot.
Yeah.
And we have those photos as well. Dude, what the hell? So how was that? How was prepping for the photo shoot? And well, first of all, why did you choose to do the photo shoot?
I wanted something to challenge myself. I had done some races. I had done some other competitions, but that was something I had never done to see what I could do with my body. And at this point, with what I had just put it through, what was it capable of? So
how long was your prep? How long when did you decide to do it versus?
I was a little late into it. I think I started late October for a February shoot. And
that's pretty late.
Bulked from like 170 up to 180, 182, and then cut down to about 165.
You look good.
It was fun. Now, my doc has become one of my close friends, the one that kept me alive through all of this.
Good. Not the heart guy.
No. That guy can, but my GI doc, who's kept me alive through the Crohn's, I went and told him what I was doing. And he's like, so let me get this straight. You're going to intentionally put on a bunch of weight, and then you're going to strip it all off and intentionally dehydrate yourself. I think you're an idiot, but let me tell you what you're going to need to do.
Yeah.
I'm blessed that I've got a doc that understands I'm going to do it. So he's like,
did he ever see the results?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did he say to the results?
He was amazed.
Yeah.
And it's cool for me because he gets so many patients that just wallow and whine. And I get it. Everybody goes through something.
Give me the fix. Give me the pill. Give me the surgery that's going to fix all of it and make my pain go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without taking responsibility for everything else. So you were pleased with the photo shoot?
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
And then what was the post? What was the goal post photo shoot?
Most of last year was a mix. I spent, I think, 6-8 months after it, really just on functional training for some paddling races, some adventure races. And then late last year, decided to do another bulk and build up and see how much size. And end of last year, I tore my Achilles. Not a full rupture, but I'm just now getting back to running. So I said, well, while I can't run on it, let's do something else and see what size we can put on. What
was, so talk about the races that you were doing. You were doing some adventure race type stuff?
Yeah.
And then links, setups, what are they?
Most of them, are these Spartan type races. It started with, I was going back to Kuwait to get married a couple years ago. And I was like, oh, I need something to do. And it turned out by chance that the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run was 5 days before my wedding. So decided to enter that. And it's both kind of a spiritual run because of where it is on that island, but it's also a brutal run. There's sections where you're crawling straight up a muddy
place is ridiculous,
mountainside.
Man. Yeah.
And did well in that and loved it. So came back and keep doing more of them. And
you have another one that's planned coming up. What is that?
I'm eyeing to go do that with the Ultimate Hawaiian this September.
Was something going to Florida, right?
There's some paddle races that I'm training. There's the Bimini to Florida crossing.
How far is that?
82 miles. And
nice.
You can do it as a relay. You can do it solo. You can do it.
What are you doing?
I want to do it on surf ski solo.
All right.
Yep.
How long is that going to take you?
14 hours?
But you've done stuff like that before?
Not that long.
What's your longest?
The Catalina Classic out in California, I did on a prone paddleboard, and that's closer to 28 miles. So
this is quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Interesting. How'd you do on the 28-miler?
I consistently did well on
Yeah.
that. I was never, top 3 finisher, but top 20 and competitive. Had fun.
So how do you balance these like long endurance races with not having a large intestine and nutrition and dehydration? What's the plan there?
I'm sorting a lot of that out as I go.
Yeah, but you've been doing it for a while.
It's carb loading ahead of time.
Okay.
With things like gels. Again, thank you, Nick Bear. And carrying hydration with me. With overly sweet, overly salty, high concentrated electrolytes.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had an incident where it's like, I didn't do something right, and now I'm paying the price?
Yeah.
Yeah? Any sort of do not finish situations?
No, do not finish. Some pretty severe cramping.
Okay.
That had me sit down, had me pause, but
never
haven't
completely
quit
out of the fight.
No.
It's interesting because your body's not gonna operate like a normal human being. That's a whole other ball of wax to deal with when you're planning.
Yeah.
What's your longest race total time-wise?
I would say it was the Catalina crossings, which have been a number of years, but those are the 12 and 14 hours.
What was your support on the water? Like
you have a support boat.
Okay, so you do have somebody there, like being
yeah,
able to pass
to
things
do
through.
any of these.
Okay.
You have to have it. And for me, my big goal, and I'm probably a couple years away from it, the ultimate crossing is the Molokai crossing in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's kind of the big one of water sports.
What would you use for that one?
I would probably use my prone paddleboard, which is a 14-foot board made by my board makers out on Big Island. But those conditions, you can be in 6 to 10-foot seas for 28 miles.
On a 14-foot paddleboard. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I think of all the shit I've done in my life, like I'm going to pass on that. That's wild, man. And that's a long one. How long is that one?
That's about the same as the Catalina.
Is it?
It's just under
You can
30.
see it.
You can see it.
I don't know if that helps you, but
No.
you can see it.
Yeah, it gives you hope.
So the Agoge was really, obviously our system works really well. But for you, it was more about being intentional with your moves and having constant objectives that you're.
It's the constant objectives. It's the accountability, even if it's self-imposed.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Josh was calling and yelling at me. It was, I had that system and I wasn't going to let him or you down. It's the community of something there. I think you know what it's like when you're running your own business. Mm-hmm. You can find yourself pretty isolated. And so getting back to the community that we had at one chapter in life.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Where did you come from, Berrick? Where do you hail from?
A little bit all over. So my folks got divorced when I was 2.
Same as me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was the 70s where the mothers were getting custody.
Of course.
My mother probably shouldn't have had custody or been a parent.
I'm never going to say that publicly ever.
She and I went our own ways when I was a teenager. She liked the bottle a little too much. I had bounced back and forth between her and my father in a military school in New Jersey, actually in Tom DeBlas's hometown, Tom's River.
What military school was that?
Admiral Farragut Academy.
Really? Is it still there?
Yeah. That campus closed. There's one down in St. Petersburg,
Okay.
Florida. She was a cop who liked the bottle, married another cop who liked to throw people around. And at 14, 15 years old, I left home looking down the barrel of his service revolver and turned around and, didn't look back.
Where did you go at 15? What year was this?
This was 1986, 87.
86? It's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, 80s were a good time.
It's a good time.
Some friends' basements. I ended up getting a studio apartment in what I now recognize as pretty much the projects. I had a teacher who was an amazing woman. She would come.
Say you stayed in high school?
Stayed in school. I ended up graduating a year early. But I had a teacher who would come by and check on me and make sure I had groceries. And it was, I've always been kind of that stubborn. My mother at the time called the school district and said, tell him to just drop out and enlist. He's never going to make anything of himself. I said, all right, challenge accepted. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
So took off and it's been fun. And this is going to sound kind of twisted, but at that point I had no roots. I had no connections to anything, so I could take off and go do whatever I wanted. I took off to California. I ended up 8 years later landing in Silicon Valley, and I had the opportunity to do some government work, and they were like, if this goes wrong, we'll relocate you.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
So what did you do? What did you do in that, like after high school?
I went to school in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And studied there. Ended up working as a beach lifeguard, and then found my way up to Silicon Valley in the early 90s, not really knowing what was going to be there. And
did you have a degree to go do something? Did you go to college?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you go to college for?
I went to school and got a degree in history and biz econ.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did the connection between that and Silicon Valley?
Hustle.
That was it?
Yeah. I mean, I ended up getting some government work because government wanted to understand how money was moving around, particularly by some of our enemies, and was under contract with the government. And then
what years were these?
This started early 90s, 93, 94.
I'm trying to think of the system that you guys would have been using back then had it been so rudimentary compared to what we were using in my time.
Yeah.
To track funds and pull all that picture together.
Well, and like now the agency has InQtel, which is a dedicated venture capital fund.
Oh, I know.
In the early days, it was...
They invested in some things that I...
Exactly.
that I used.
In the early days, it was, how do we get these funds without knowing what's what and who's where?
Yeah.
So...
And you just fell into that. That's bizarre.
I was kind of the prime candidate. I had no
background, college degree.
Yep.
No people to be attached to.
Yeah.
You fit the mold.
Yep.
If you disappear, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Or if we make you disappear, nobody cares. Right. Yeah. So how long did you play in that world? Or was you doing that and adjacent to all the other stuff?
Yeah, it was all a mix. And so I did that.
Is this where you founded your company?
Yeah. So I went to work at one of the largest investment banking firms in San Francisco.
Who was that?
It's called Robertson Stevens.
Okay.
At the peak of the dot-com boom, we were taking companies public like Pixar and Netscape. And
is this through TPGI?
No, that was, I was working on a trading desk.
No shit.
And we were one of the places where...
How old were you?
21, 22.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
So you were just like printing money and...
It was a good time.
It was a good time.
Yeah. I mean...
This will never end. Nothing could ever go wrong.
That was exactly it. I remember going from having a $2,000 a month flat to a $10,000 a month loft and thought nothing of it. It was just like, okay, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Eventually, both the contract work that I was doing and just my interests, I said, time to start my own firm. So my buddy and I did, and we were guiding a lot of startups through the process of going public or raising venture capital and mergers and doing that through the big boom in the dot-com era.
Dang. So when you did that all back in the 90s, when you see like what some of the guys in the Agoge doing, like what I'm doing, what I've built over the last 10 years, like what's your feeling or thoughts when you see stuff like that?
So I think there's a world of difference between building a brick and mortar business or a consumer good like you've done with Johnny Slicks or you've done with your other things. .com, we were printing money. It was made up. I can remember sitting at a conference table.
How did I miss that?
Everything
that I do is so difficult.
We would sit there and there would be 4 companies at a conference table And they would say, okay, I'm going to buy $2 million in advertising on your site. You buy $2 million in advertising on mine. They would pass checks to each other, and then they'd go to the venture capital firm the next day and say, we've done $8 million in revenues.
Fuck.
Yeah. So I think...
And they're not out of anything.
No. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there were some brilliant things that came out of that. And
Yeah,
I
of
had
course.
the chance. There was a group that I was involved with called Lead 21, which was started by like me, Peter Thiel, Warren Hoffman, and it was bringing together all of these tech guys and business guys around more of a libertarian approach to government and to what was happening.
That's interesting. You consider Peter Thiel as a libertarian?
He was
Back
in the
day.
90s.
In the 90s?
And yeah, I mean, Peter's gone down some fascinating paths. For a while, he was funding what's called seasteading.
Yeah.
We're building offshore mega platforms to experiment with different kinds of government.
Okay.
There's some cool stuff out of Silicon Valley. I mean, you look at so much of what we use and play with now,
Oh, yeah.
but money was being thrown at everybody for any idea until 2006 or 2000 when the bubble burst.
So 2000 is when it first popped for you guys.
April of 2000, the market went down 9% in a single day.
What was the cause of that?
It was so many things. I think, one, everything was overvalued. Two, there started to be margin calls on a lot of things. It was, I think it was Alan Greenspan who talked about irrational exuberance at the time.
I mean, is stuff that between, like, from a political standpoint, was it stuff that Clinton was doing and then Bush coming in? Like, did that change things?
I don't think it was political. There was so much easy money throwing around, and there weren't the fundamentals behind it. When I saw the guy down at the bodega on the corner saying, I'm a day trader and I'm making my money on these .com stocks, that's kind of when I knew the market was screwed. But it imploded, and it sucked for us. We had one of our clients, we were negotiating with one of the major investment banks in New York on that day in April to take it public. They were going to sign the final paperwork on an IPO. And as I'm walking through Lower Manhattan, getting ready to go in, it all implodes.
Wow. Where was your head at during that time?
I think shock. I think overwhelmed. Flew back to San Francisco. My business partner was a lot like me. He was a shit-kicking delinquent off the streets that neither of us should have ever been where we were. So I remember he grew up in East Oakland, mixed race, Polish and black kid, youngest trader on the floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange. And we sat there in my loft looking out at the Bay Bridge. We're like, look, we never should have been here anyway. It's been one hell of a ride. What are we going to do? And we took 24 hours to sleep on it. And then we looked around at a lot of the companies we were working with that suddenly went from being worth $20 million to being worth $500,000. And a lot of these .com founders got really used to taking big salaries, $250,000, $500,000 salaries on businesses that weren't making any money.
Yeah.
And when it all imploded, they just wanted to walk away. So within the week, we started rolling them up and said, let's see what we can do with this.
You just
operate
pivoted
them.
to acquisitions.
Yeah.
And you had the cash to be able to do it?
We had the cash. In a lot of cases, we had the leverage.
Okay.
A lot of the deals that we worked on, our compensation was stakes in the business. And we had foregone payments. We said, look, you can either liquidate everything and pay us what you owe us, or you can hand your business over to us.
You guys were sharks.
We played aggressive.
So looking at all of that happened, because like I remember that happening, but I was fresh in the Marine Corps. So obviously my focus during that time in the Marine Corps was very like entry level stuff. And I'm like, this is my world. I don't even know what was going on in the world until September 11th happened. I remember that like it was yesterday. But then obviously I was not affected by any means because I was still in special operations, but the 2008 kind of crash is what I remember a little bit more. So being through a couple of these different kind of, I don't want to say financial resets, but financial hiccups for the economy. What do you see? What is your opinion based off of looking at those two incidences and then looking at what's happening now and with the state of our economy now and everything that Trump's doing. Well, what other people did prior to him and then what he's doing now.
I think this one's different.
You do? Okay.
I think 2000 and 2008 were based on market conditions.
Yeah. Stuff that led up to.
Stuff that led up. All of the volatility the last 4 months has been manufactured. And I'm not going to get into, in part because the policy work that I do, I don't get partisan.
Yeah.
Whether you agree or disagree with his theory of action, and they seem to believe that if you devalue the US dollar, you can drive manufacturing back and you can reset it. Whether that's right or not, economists will agree and disagree. But what we saw in the market with these major corrections was manufactured. It was inevitable because of decisions and actions that they took with the tariffs and with other things. How it plays out, I don't know. But I don't see any underlying economic factors that caused that. So I think the recovery, depending on how this whole tariff back and forth goes, will be strong. I think it's as big of a money-making opportunity, though, as 2000 and 2008. In 2000...
How so?
Well, in 2000, all these companies got crashed below what they were actually worth, so you could buy them under their value. 2008, you look at what happened with real estate. We were giving loans to people that shouldn't have them. We were inflating housing prices. It crashed in the foreclosure crisis, and you could buy up a lot of real estate. Some would argue that's what's led to things like our Airbnb market, because people were able to scoop it up. Now you're seeing stocks, you're seeing assets, you're seeing businesses artificially deflated if we normalize trade relations. And I don't see a world where we're not going to end up negotiating, with all these countries to have trade relations. We need it as much as they need it.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity, whether it's in the markets or people are spooked by businesses. And you look back 100 years, back to the Great Depression. The biggest wealth in this country has always been made when people made moves at times like this.
Yeah.
So it's time for the bold.
That's kind of the way I look at it. Everybody freaks out, and we've talked about this in the past. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. Like, while everybody's panicking, I'm snatching shit up as much as I can.
Now, I think people have to avoid the shiny things, the latest meme coin, or there's a lot in the crypto world that's valid, things like Ripple and Ethereum, but the latest meme coin that somebody's hyping on
the Trump
Twitter,
coin?
Yeah.
No, thank you. My father-in-law hit me up. I'm like, I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass. I'm looking at long-term things.
That's right.
That, people look at these, they'll look at the markets. In phase 3, we talked about it. I'm like, look, here's a 5-day window. Like, I don't give a shit about a 5-day window. Like, what does that look like over the last 20 years? Like, what are the ebbs and flows every 4 years of that stock or that crypto? Like, and then what is the use case? What are they doing in the market with it? That's what I'm more concerned about it. I think people get way too emotional.
They definitely do. And I mean, it's the same thing with real estate. I mean, you own property, and we've seen it go up and we've seen it go down. We've seen interest rates come up and down. What's real estate going to do over 10 years?
It's going to go up.
We're not going to get fewer people that want fewer places to live.
No.
So.
Yeah, it's going to go up forever. I always like listening to you guys like you that you've been around the financial markets for a long time, because you and even old man Joe have, a much longer lens, right? Like, I'm 43 years old. I served in the military until I was 30 something. So I really didn't even start my adult life really until I was post 30. You know what I mean? Like that's when I got to start growing up and entered into society. So I don't have several decades under my belt of living in this world. So it's interesting when you got Joe, who's like, what, 73 or 74 now? Like, he's seen some shit. And like, even the other day, somebody was commenting about the market, and he like laid it out there. like guys, do not get them. Like, I've seen this 4 or 5 times in my lifetime, and it always comes back better than it was before. And I think it's really important to hear those stories, because people do get so caught up emotionally into what's going on.
They get so caught up. I mean, I start sounding like the grumpy old man, But you've got a generation.
That's what my wife says
right?
to me now. Yeah.
You've got a generation that expects the instant gratification. They're like, well, I know you said long term, but I've held it for a week. What do you expect me to do? They want that instant. They want it now. Or they say, well, I know you said that, but I was hoping.
Yeah.
Hope ain't a plan.
Yeah, hope is not a course of action. That's for sure. Okay, so going back, so you were snatched up these businesses. What do you guys do with them? What happened after that?
We operated a lot of them.
Okay.
And we had things that we were doing a lot in digital media. We owned the first company that did a digital music subscription service.
Which one was that?
It was called Spin Records. It was one of our holdings, and we bought it when the implosion happened.
Mm-hmm.
We had one called Builder Search that was an online construction portal. We had a bunch of different things, and at the same time, I was at the point of just getting tired.
Yeah.
I had been...
Did you protect all your money, or did you lose a bunch of money?
I lost a ton.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you make money fast and you're young. You don't have the experience, right?
No, I mean, I thought it was going to keep coming forever.
Yeah. So no.
I mean,
what's the point?
Yeah.
Checks coming in next month too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was getting tired. I was questioning the point of what I was doing. Honestly, I was like, okay, I can keep hustling, working 100-hour weeks to make money, and I have no social life. I have no people in my life. I wanted to do something that made a difference. It's when I started getting involved with some of these more political organizations and started getting pulled in that direction.
So this it didn't happen like you didn't close a book and open a new one. It was you kind of transitioned.
I did.
To policy.
Yeah.
So what did that look? What did that? Because I was always curious. I'm like, I remember what you did in the past. I'm like, how did you get into like government policy?
So we started this group called Lead 21. Like I said, it was venture capitalists, it was tech founders who frankly were getting sick of what Washington, D.C. was doing to Silicon Valley, all their regulations, all their new laws. And so we were bringing people together to advocate for policies that would make it easier for us to do business. And along that path, I started getting more frustrated with government and started saying, I want to do something. I've contracted for government. I'm now trying to influence government.
So this is like what, 2000?
Mid-2000s.
Mid-2000s
Yeah.
at this point? Okay. Just trying to remember like what's going on in the world at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to spend more time influencing public policy. And frankly, answering that question of, are we really the land of the free and the home of the brave? Do we really...
Careful asking those questions.
Right?
Yeah. You might like the answer you find.
No, and so I wanted to get more involved with advancing policies that really made it possible for everybody to chase the dream.
State or federal level?
Yes.
Okay.
I wasn't going to limit it. And I was at a point where I was calling bullshit on both parties.
Mm-hmm.
There's the reality of, if we're not giving everybody a great education, do they really have a shot at it? And on the other side, if we're over-regulating them, are we ever going to thrive as businesses? So I got drawn more into doing policy. That drew me closer to politicians. And I joke with people, I spent the next 8 or 10 years getting people elected to office in the even years and fixing what they were doing in the odd years.
So you're doing all kinds of politics, not just education.
Yeah.
Okay. Because at some point you end up in Colorado.
Yep.
And a lot of it was education.
It was.
Okay.
For a bit. Yeah.
Okay. How did that happen? And this was not on your own. You were working with
I went to work for a firm out in Colorado who wanted me to build a practice around education. And then I kind of expanded that into workforce development and good government. But there's so much attention. I mean, you see it with what guys like Matt are doing, what's happening with public schools, private schools, charter schools. There's a lot of energy around how are our kids doing? And the latest test scores say not so good. So yeah, I went to work for a firm in Colorado that wanted me to build a practice.
What was their intention?
I don't know that they had a clear answer, and that was part of the problem.
Yeah. 'Cause I commend you for doing that and trying to make some sort of change, but from where I sit, it's like they don't want any change. So it's like, are you really being efficient by doing anything really?
And so I ended up building something different than what that organization had historically done.
Okay.
They worked in policy in a bunch of different areas, from energy to the environment. And in fact, their background had been in energy.
And they're going to tackle education? Yeah. Okay, sure.
The CEO that brought me in had been an elected politician and had some ideas of their own. I had the idea that rather than trying to say this is the policy, what if I brought smart people together? Instead of just relying on politicians, some of them are very well intentioned, but they're not experts.
Yeah.
I said, what if I brought the people that really are all of the experts, the parents, the teachers, the employers, and we all sat at a table and said, what do we really need? And that was the approach I was taking there. And I had built up a pretty good practice there.
Do you feel like you made, I don't want to say change happen, did you influence things into a better direction?
We did. I mean, enough? No.
Uh-huh.
I know, during one of the things we did was during COVID. I pulled together teachers, principals, social workers, psychiatrists, and we said, what are we learning about how kids are being affected by all of this?
Because I mean, there's people that did it right, there's people that did it wrong, but if you look at everybody across the board, kids that went to school during that time are fucked up, man.
It broke my heart. My stepson, who's now a freshman in college, he was in middle school
When this happened?
He should have been seeing girls in a high school, dance, and he was seeing 1-inch squares on a screen. So we brought a lot of people together to ask, what are we learning and what do we need to change about this? And we ended up advancing a number of new laws. And in that state, the legislature has what's called a joint budget committee, equal number of Democrats and Republicans that decide how much they're going to spend on things. We asked them for $7 million for some programs. They came back and unanimously gave us $13 million and said, we want these new programs. We want to listen to what you're saying. And that to me was why I was doing what I was doing, is taking the power and putting it in the hands of the people that actually are affected.
What did you see in Colorado once that happened? Like, what was the effect?
So some of the big things we did was we created entire new career pathways for teachers. That if you were a professional with expertise in whether it's the sciences or the arts or trades, we created a pathway for you to come into a school and become a teacher. It was basically a teacher apprenticeship program. We created new pathways for what's called competency-based learning, where instead of saying every kid must take this many hours to have learned this, let's find out if the kid has learned it. And if they had, maybe we should look to move them along.
Yeah.
So we made progress.
So the opposite of everybody stays in the same boat and no child left behind, which I never thought about. I had John Uzgadagi on here, and he's from what do you say, Venezuela. So he knows, like,
I remember listening to that show.
Remember that podcast? And he was like talking about, and I never thought about it, George Bush's initiative of No Child Left Behind. He's like, that's a socialist plan. He's like, what do you mean no child left behind? Some people are going to be left behind. Some people are going to be top. Some people are at the bottom. Some people are just going to be left behind. And he said, as soon as he heard that, he was like, oh shit, that's socialism in America. Nope. And that's when he started getting involved in a bunch of different things. But yeah, because he had seen the fall of Venezuela.
Right.
Yeah.
So we made a difference there, but to me, it wasn't enough. It wasn't at scale. And what I saw was this whole approach of taking the most complex issues that government deals with and taking them into the hands of the people that are the experts on it has a lot of power to get things done.
Yeah. So you break off from, you were working with a company at that point, and you decided to do your own. I did. Yeah. What was that decision like?
It was a year of negotiating with that CEO who made a lot of promises. If you hit this revenue, I'll give you this. We'll set this up. When it came time, I more than met what I had agreed to do.
Yeah.
And the response I got was, I fucked up. I lied. I guess I'm going to have to live with that.
That was it?
Yep. And I said, I guess you will.
So that makes your decision real easy, right?
So I spent a couple months putting my ducks in a row. Exited amicably from my side, gave notice, said I'm going to go open up my own shop.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of relationships in state and federal government that I'd done work for, at that point, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So started the firm with my wife. We're at 2 years now, and we are doing significantly more than what I did under
Under
that
the
other
other.
firm shop.
Isn't that funny how it works? How old are you now?
I'm 53.
53. Do you think it's like we were talking about it before, like, do you think it should be like kind of a natural evolution of, when you get to a certain age, you kind of should break off on your own, or is it personality based?
I think it's personality.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't really work out if everybody decided
Yeah.
they were only going to work for themselves. I think some people are wired, they want to be told what to do. They want the job, they want the stability, the security of
Without the stress.
I go check in and I'm not responsible for whether there's enough sales. I'm not responsible for that. I think there are those of us, though, who just, whether we want more out of life or we're just wired to, I know a better way.
Or maybe more control over my own life. I think that's what it comes down to, is like, as I get older, I want to maintain being the CEO of my own life, and the captain of my own ship. And if I want to do a job, then I do it. If I don't want to do a job, I don't need to do it. That's exactly. But I want to have a setup to where it's like, I have choices. Yeah. To me, that's true freedom.
Yeah. Carrie and I talk about it all the time. We get calls from somebody say, "Hey, can you come in and do this?" And we look at it and we're like, "No, we're gonna pass on that one." We're also big on.
I know this guy; he can do it.
Right. Yeah. We're also big on, and I know this fits with you and Allie, and it sounds trite, but life by design.
Yeah.
We have made the life we want to live.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that 24/7 we get to do what we want. But
no, it's not.
There's a lot more flexibility.
I don't live in a fantasy land.
No.
I do a bunch of shit I don't want to do. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to do it all the time. But it's like, I chose this. I built this. No one's forcing me to do it. No one's forcing me to do anything. Yep. And I think that's a big thing. But I just, as I've gotten older, maybe more, like you said, grumpier, more grumpier, I just want to have a choice, and not have somebody dictate to me what I'm doing at this stage in my life, And you're right. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. So you made the move from Colorado, the frigid Colorado.
Yep.
Colorado's beautiful. It's fucking cold. To our little neck of the woods here locally. What was that move? What was the purpose of that?
One that had always been the deal Carrie and I made, when we got together.
Oh, that's right, because you were based in Hawaii.
I'd been all over in California, and we've got our place in Florida. I'm a beach kid. And I went out to Colorado. Honestly,
of her. You can just say.
No, I didn't go there because I met her in Colorado.
So you went there for her?
No, I hadn't met her, but that was apparently the purpose of me getting there, was to find her.
Yeah.
And when we got together, her kids were 6 and 10. And I was never going to even suggest that she take her kids away from where it was home and their dad, who is a great guy there. But the deal was, when they graduated,
you were the odd
I get
man
my
out.
beach.
Yeah, you were the odd man out, not them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the deal was, when they graduate, I get my beach.
So what was the time frame between them graduating and you getting your beach?
Our youngest graduated last June.
Uh-huh.
We put in an offer on a house here in July.
You were like, that was the deal. I'm out. We're going to get.
I think Carrie would have loved another year to transition.
I'm sure.
Danny in. I joked. I was like, what if we did a combination graduation party open house?
Yeah.
And just made it one big celebration. She's like, no, we're not doing that. But we had come out here. My folks retired. My father and stepmother, who are the parents I am close with, they retired down to Pinehurst here in North Carolina. So we came out to visit them, and then came out and visited with you.
Yeah.
We were coming to see them, and we're like, let's go to the beach somewhere. Looked on a map and landed in Carolina Beach. And then I remember asking you, I'm like, so how far is Carolina Beach from you? You're like, down the road. And we just fell in love with it out here.
Yeah.
Florida, where we've got a house, is a little too Florida for Carrie. Mm-hmm. We're loving it.
What area of Florida?
We have a place in a little town called Sebastian, which is on the Atlantic side, about an hour south of Cape Canaveral.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's a nice area.
But we sold the house in Colorado, bought the house here, got a condo in Colorado in Golden.
You're still serving clients there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm back there. I was just looking. I think I've flown 35,000 miles this year so far. So
Yeah, I did 250,000 last year.
that's insane.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that this year. I don't think I'm gonna have to.
I thought it was going to be about once a month. It's been more, but I just bought a boat. We just put it at the marina, and my plan is to spend the summer
on the boat.
playing. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you working, so as far as your firm now, you got clients in Colorado, are you working here in North Carolina? How are you?
We're having a lot of, we're in the process of expanding here. We've got some projects in the works in North Carolina and out of DC.
The state needs you.
It's kind of the sense I've gotten.
Yeah. I'm not hating that you're here. Please look this guy up if you're in state government. I mean, I do like this area. It's a nice area, but on the state, like, government side, it seems like we can't get it right, and like all the lessons have been there over the years, and we're still not paying attention. And I don't know if it's legitimately just because of Raleigh and Charlotte, but I'm like, you guys are killing the state. The state's a lot bigger than Charlotte and Raleigh.
It's a fascinating, and I'm just getting to know it. But to me, the state is so fascinating how different that the triangle is compared to Western North Carolina, compared to us here on
down here,
the Eastern Coast. Yeah.
And that's what I feel like. I feel like you have two cities representing the entire state of people that don't align with the entire state. And I know that it's a populous base. But it's like you guys are making the decisions that they have made over the last 5 years has decimated this state.
What's been the worst that you've seen them do?
The worst that I've seen them do is how long they locked businesses down during COVID. We had gyms were opened up. Obviously, this is my whole thing.
Yep.
But it's probably how you found me. Gyms were open in California before they were open here.
That's insane.
Right? Strip clubs were open here before gyms. Booze, because we're an ABC state, never shut down.
Interesting.
Pool companies, because I have a pool companies were required to become licensed plumbers because licensed plumbers were deemed essential.
All right, that makes sense.
And if pool companies were deemed essential, then at the time, Governor Cooper could have his pool serviced.
Okay.
And it just, I watched businesses that were career businesses, family businesses that have been in, 30, 40 years just fall apart because they couldn't sustain. Like, essentially I lost a business. It's no big deal, but I pivoted. I had other businesses, but still, it was a hard pill for me to swallow because my rent was still due. My employees they still need to be paid because their rent was due. I couldn't earn. Government was coming after me for taxes. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I tried to fight them on it. They were like, you got to talk to we're two different departments. I'm like, guys, you guys are killing me. So
Government.
We have one government, so I can't earn money, but you're wanting me to pay taxes on the property that I own that I
can't make money from.
That I can't make money from. And I just, my brain exploded. And then looking at this across the state, it was rough, man. It was rough. And then watching them not take corrective action and not learn from their mistakes, and then just doubling down and then continue, and then acting like nothing ever happened and then just continue on.
And I think that's it. I mean, smart people at the time could debate the science because nobody really knew.
Nobody knew.
But the hypocrisy of how government was treating things, I think showed who was controlling government and who does now. Like, I even look at things like they forgave all of these big corporations' loans that they got, but all of the individuals.
I'll be paying on that shit for the rest
one
of
of
my
these
life.
SBA loans. There's no forgiveness for the individual who was really getting beat up, but the big corporations got theirs forgiven. So
I don't
who
even,
was being served?
I don't even look at that loan because it's going to be there forever.
Yeah.
I just pay it.
Yeah.
Pay the payment, and I forget about it. It's just a tax that I have to pay because of.
It's another mortgage.
It's another mortgage that I have to pay for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The rest of my life, but it's gonna be a while. But yeah, and that's like things like that. The government that said, oh, you guys are all forgiven. All the ones that were deemed like the Walmarts, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, all the things that stayed, grocery stores, all the things that stayed open and they never stopped earning, got the loans, got them forgiven.
Yep.
But guys like myself that affected, everyone in this building, like no. So it's a hard pill to swallow, and it's hard not to be get extremely jaded. So anyways, yeah, out of all the states, there's a lot of states that did a lot of things right. No one did it perfect, but man, North Carolina, we were like the East Coast California. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous. There was things open in New York before they were open here. And I can't wrap my head around anything other than their own personal agendas. And the fact that he got reelected after he decimated the state's economy, and he never even campaigned. I never saw one campaign from this guy. That
is insane. And I mean, I wasn't here following North Carolina enough to know. When I look at it from the work I do in policy and done in politics, there was just so much groupthink, frankly, on both sides. And I think the panic on let's lock everything down, and one person would say it so people would run with it.
Yeah.
And frankly, you had people on the other side too saying, this is no risk, there's no threat whatsoever. It just got stupid, and it was, to me, kind of that big tipping point of turning Americans against each other.
Yeah.
And that's what disgusted me.
And it did that because I was outspoken about what I was going through, but I became like, oh, I'm killing people.
Right. And see, here I'm now living with.
Not here.
No, but I'm in another place. At the time, I've just been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease.
Right.
To treat me, I'm on immune suppressants.
Mm-hmm.
The best science at the time was I was one of those people who, if I got COVID, I was probably going to be on a vent.
Yeah.
So I took my precautions. I did wear a mask. I did go to places, but I was never going to tell somebody else what they should do with their life.
Because it was only affecting you.
It was my decision, and I needed to take care of me.
Did you get COVID?
I did. The only time I got it was actually on a trip out here a year ago. We got it on the airplane. And the funny thing was, it completely kicked Carrie's butt. I wouldn't have known I was sick if I didn't take a test.
No kidding.
I was and I attribute it to being in such good health.
Yeah.
That it didn't affect me. But that was one of those things, is everybody back during COVID wanted to tell everybody else how they had to live. Either you have to mask up because I'm going to, or you're not allowed to wear a mask because I don't want to. I didn't care what anybody else did. Just, if you've got COVID, don't come stand and spit on my face.
Yeah. I'm
going to do me, you do you.
Yeah. And that was my whole thing. I'm like, these things are so effective, then you wear one. And you'll be fine.
Right.
Why is it
and I always said,
protect yourself.
I probably wasn't going to go into a closed-door gym with 20 sweaty people.
Yeah.
But if 20 people wanted to, who am I to tell somebody what to do or what not to do?
It sounds like this is, luckily the people that listen to this are not, the enemy. Maybe a couple, just to hate on some comments. But I don't know where I was going with that. It's just so frustrating. It's my whole life. But anyways, I don't really care. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. So you're here in North Carolina. You're going back to Colorado. What's next? What are we doing?
We're plugging away at two businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the work doing the government policy stuff. We're also doing a lot with private businesses, where they have a big merger or they've got something controversial going on or contentious. We go in and facilitate getting common ground. And then we're starting to do some more work on the corporate finance side again.
Did I tell you that we got a cease and desist from a pharmaceutical company?
No.
Yeah.
Johnny Slicks did?
Mm-hmm.
For what?
How do I word this? Telling the truth
about their ingredients.
Yep. So we were
Good.
basically.
How public do they want to make the fight?
I'm not going to fight with this particular.
Okay.
Like I feel like it's a losing battle. They have infinite money with infinite
one of those.
lawyers.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the fact that we're on their radar,
Yeah.
made me kind of happy. But legitimately, it was because we were highlighting certain products and certain ingredients that causes an issue for people, and then also that they were also selling the solution. So we now can not say that these things happen. I can't tell you that this is happening.
It's kind of like the company that will sell you the
disease,
the product that gives you the disease
and the cure at the same time. Yeah. So anyways, that was interesting, which I'll be talking more about in the right context as soon as the lawyer cleans it up for me.
Good.
But honestly, it was kind of crazy. No one here really fully panicked. Like you would think that, because that's a big deal for us, you know? So is that some of the stuff you're doing? You're kind of negotiating those sort of things, or?
We don't tend to negotiate between like two companies. You know,
you're working with one company to like, how can we help benefit
it's either
you?
What do they have going on internally? Maybe they just did a merger and people aren't getting along, or they need to do their next 3-year strategic plan, which we do a lot of work of. We've got a major retailer that has started opening up in some communities. And the small businesses are upset because of how big this retailer is. So we're going into some communities and having those conversations about, hey, these guys are coming. What can they do to be a good part of your community?
Ease the blow a little bit.
Ease the blow. See if they can. I mean, if there's some things they can genuinely do.
Yeah. What's the next big race coming?
Assuming the Achilles has me fully training again, it'll be the Ultimate Hawaiian.
Okay.
Back on Kauai in September.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be out there in the Big Island next month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When's the next time you're going?
I probably won't get out until then.
Oh, really? Okay. And if the Achilles doesn't, you can still paddle though, can't you?
Paddle. Yeah.
So you're going to do the paddle one anyway.
This fall will be on the paddle boards. Yeah, in surf ski.
Okay. Cool. Well, guys, where can they, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, I'd like to pick his ear or see if they can help my business or some local government stuff?
On social media, Berrick Abramson. On Instagram, you can find our two businesses, confluencepsg.com or tpgiventures.com.
And those links are in the description, guys. Well, Berrick, it's a freaking pleasure, man. And you're a beast, dude.
I appreciate you. I really do.
Yeah, man. Like 50, what?
53.
53. And you're like, fuck it, I'm going to get stronger and better.
Yep.
You hear that, guys? Like, you don't have to peter out, man. It drives me nuts. Like, we can keep getting better. All right, guys. That's it. Built by discipline, driven by purpose. We're out of here. Thanks, Bert. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate that. Remember to like it. Remember to drop me a comment. I want to respond to it. I'm actually the one responding to the comments. And if you like this video, you're going to absolutely love this one right here.